Okay. We have two time periods of Mashiach. One time period is called Tkufat Mashiach ben Yosef, the time period of Mashiach ben Yosef, which means, as we understand it, the period that precedes Mashiach ben David, and that we understand is identified as a time period rather than a person. So generally speaking, when we talk about Tkufat Mashiach ben Yosef, we're talking about a time period in Jewish history. Many people, I certainly feel very strongly in this direction. I would imagine many of you do as well. Believe that the time period that began uh, with the launching of the state of Israel was the Mashiach ben Yosef time period. So for the first time in 2,000 years, we have a place to be home. We have we have one of the most eclectic Jewish populations in the world, and miracle after miracle, remarkable achievement one after the other. So according to many, we're in the time period of Mashiach ben Yosef, and that's and again, that's as witnessing in the land of Israel.
Sir.
And I said from someone last week is he taught something very interesting based on the Kabbalah. He said that we're really in the Tkufa, the time period of Mashiach ben David, which is the final time period, which gives birth, so to speak, to the great, 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 great grandson of Ruth HaMoabiyah, who will be Mashiach. Beautiful, very exciting. So when I heard the first part of the sentence, I was incredibly uplifted. It means the Geulah, the redemption time of Mashiach, is much closer than you would think. At the same time, he said, but listen, during this time period, of Mashiach ben David, there will be certain things that take root in the Jewish people. And this is what I want to talk about tonight in reference to the missiles. He said that according to the Arizal, who is considered the author of Kabbalah from our perspective, the period of Mashiach ben David, let's call it our period, will be a time period where Hakarat HaTov, where the appreciation of good is dashed, is diminished, is not where it should be. And it will be a time period of a lack of Achdut, a lack of unity within the Jewish people. So it's very interesting because during the time when things are brighter than ever from a Torah point of view, there's more Torah in the world than ever before. There's more learning Torah in the world than ever before. We're closer to bring Mashiach from that perspective than ever before. But the Ben Adam le Havero, in terms of appreciating another and feeling connected to another, and the Ben Adam le Makom, in terms of appreciating God, is diminished. And he said that the kilipot, the shards, the outer portions of things, not the essence, not the beautiful part, people, is what sort of takes charge in the world. Okay? He said that ga'ava, that haughtiness, that chutzpah, that people's lack of consideration in being brazen and embarrassing another, they would trump the day. And he said that Corona and what happened in Meron was God shouting about these issues. Okay, maybe we're there, maybe we're not there. But from my perspective, the question becomes, when you have a situation like this, whether it be, hey, Bobby, whether it be Corona, Meron, missiles and riots in the Jewish homeland, or anything like this, what is our call to action? Now, if we say it's because we're in the Kufat Mashiach ben David. We're in this final time period of the Geulah, and for that reason, our actions will be judged more harshly, and the lack of certain basic core Jewish things will be called out. Well, okay, that means that whether I'm in Israel, or I'm in Brooklyn, or I'm in Jersey, or I'm in wherever, I have a responsibility and an opportunity to stop a missile. So, assuming that we're in the later stages of the Geulah, which we certainly are, whether it's the later stages of Mashiach ben Yosef or the stage of Mashiach ben David, the son of David, doesn't really matter. Assuming that these issues are paramount, and it makes total sense because they were paramount 2,000 years ago. Unity, caring about another, and so on. So then the point is that we can and must get involved and do something. Okay, so I want to open the floor to you guys now. There's 130 some odd missiles that were thrown in the last X number of hours. My son-in-law Moshe sent me a video from our office in Tel Aviv showing the missiles exploding in the air. People have been killed. People have been hurt. It's very, very real. The Arab terrorists are taking advantage of the situation to open up several different fronts, which is a common thread for them. Riot in certain Arab cities and mixed cities and so on. So if we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is calling out to us and shouting out to us, and we're in the latest stages of the Geulah, of the redemption, and during those stages, we've got to be better than ever in terms of how we relate to another or how we treat another. Give me a few examples of what we can do, each of us, to make a statement of change, to make a statement of protection for people. Give me some ideas. What would you say? Serene, what do you say?
I don't know, just on a basic level, obviously show our support and our care for, what's happening in Israel and our fellow Jews.
Right, but I want to go further. I want to say that every person has a piece of this, and every person has the opportunity to fix it. So if that's true, and it's about my midot and my character traits, and his and hers and yours and yours and yours, and all of us individually, then we need to say, and I can't be there to provide intelligence or to provide security or whatever it might be. Hi, Eb, how are you? I can't be there to do that. But if I understand the calling of this time period and I make a change in my own behavior, who knows? That could help. Even further, that might be the tipping point for good. So we can't sit here in Brooklyn or wherever and simply look at the news and say, oh my God, I hope everybody's okay. Can't do that because kulanu arevim, right? We're connected to each other. What's happening to her is happening to me. And my behavior and my life script and his and hers are all create God's relationship to the world. So we need, during a time period like this, during the Omer, coming off of this horrific Meron story, we need to say there is a call here for better, to be better, and let's do something. Let's do something. Each person do something. Our rabbis say as follows. We have three areas of doing. We have machshava, thought, which is ratzon, the expression of will. We have dibur, which is articulating something that we'd like to do. And we have the maaseh. Our rabbis say that once a person identified something in his or her mind that he or she would like to do to better a situation, to make his character traits better, then it's already a fact on the ground. So we want to try and get some missiles to stop falling and people to stop being terrified. Each person, we can't go there, right? A few people were in touch with me today. I got to go there. Okay, great. Go there and help. And that certainly has great value. But for most people who can't go there, we can't simply express solidarity and sorrow. That's not the Jewish model. So if we know that this is a time period when these are the failings of the Jewish people, unity, acceptance, and so on, each of us should be making a commitment to better ourselves in an area related to another.
But Ricky, I have something to say. I know
Okay.
you're looking for a spiritual way, but also money helps a lot. Sending money to Israel right now is a big factor.
You're 100% right, Sarah, and one doesn't preclude the other. You're 100% right. Send money, call people, right? All the things, good things that we've done in the past, right? But we know, and we've discussed it in our group, that the power of the Jewish people is not with its arms and army, although we must have an army and we revere the sacrifice of our soldiers, right? We know that the tipping points are based on our behavior, on our spirituality. That's where our power is. So
I feel like, Dad, I feel like it's so important for us, like even someone just to look at what happened today and to educate themselves. I feel like education is power also.
absolutely, 100%, no doubt about it. We have to be in the inyan. But I want to be an agent for change. Our rabbis recommend the following: give musar to people, tell people when they're doing something wrong, but do it without any suggestion of judgment. Pretty high bar. 10 musar b'li ka'as, b'li din. Give. So rather than not giving, or rather than giving and criticizing, give musar as a teacher, not as a judge. Give musar as a teacher. That builds people. Our rabbis suggest something else. They say that search out in our own hearts any areas of anger. Where are there areas of anger in our hearts? Our rabbis say a fascinating thing. They say that anger, ka'as, removes mazal. It pushes good fortune away. So any areas of ka'as, of anger that a person feels, confront that anger. Confront it. Write something on a piece of paper. That's a plan to move away from it. So lahasir ka'as, or step away from situations that create anger. I know for me personally, American news, Fox News, now it's Newsmax, these things make me anxious. They make me angry. And I said, you know what? When do I pick up these news stations? When I'm eating, when I can't have a book open in front of me, kind of thing. And then I thought of it, I said, you know what? Rather than opening up the news stations, which makes me anxious, which creates anger in me, because it's really very much designed to do that, I'll listen to something enlightening and educational during that time period. I can't have a book open, but I'll listen to something. So it's another possibility of changing behavior minimally. We don't know where the tipping point is. We don't know what the tipping point was to create what's going on now. But it's all of us. We're all in it together. If God forbid the survival of the state of Israel was really threatened, and it might be, right? Any of these things, who knows? How could 130 missiles hit in the center of Israel when they have one of the strongest, most sophisticated armies in the world. How could that be? What's going on? It's reason to tremble. It's reason to cry. It absolutely is. And if anything, if the state of Israel was truly threatened, its survival, it ain't long before the program is over out here in good old great America. So what do? We change, we improve. A couple of other things. There's a very interesting perspective in Judaism. It says as follows. Let's say you have a situation you can't solve. Let's say you have a situation you can't solve. Let's say, for example, you borrowed money from somebody and you can't pay it back right now because you don't have the money. Can't pay it back. And you feel very bad about it, that you can't pay it back. Our rabbis suggest a very interesting thing. If you're confronted with a situation that you can't fix and it's taking a toll on you, it's bringing you down, take out a piece of paper and write on that paper that should the circumstances allow, to our example, allow me to pay back this money, I will do so. Not setting a date, not making a commitment. It's al-t'nai. It's a commitment al-t'nai, a conditional commitment, which means if there is an opportunity for me to do so, I will do it. Our rabbis explain that that's a game changer, that that's a giant positive step in the Jewish people, because someone whose hands were tied at a particular point didn't shirk responsibility. The ratzon, the will, was articulated to fix the problem. The dibur, in this case it's ketiva, the writing was articulated. It was written. It was confirmed. The only thing that's lacking is the maaseh, the actual action, the carrying it out. But it doesn't matter because you already knocked out 2 out of 3. You're in a different place in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind, and we should be at a different place in our own minds, feeling better about ourselves and therefore being able to interact with others better. You with me? Sarah, you good?
Yeah.
All right, beautiful, great. Okay, now, okay, our rabbis mentioned one other thing, and this is really a sidebar to what I want to discuss tonight, but I want you to hear it because it's mentioned within the same group of thinking. Our rabbis say that taref soref et haneshama. We're going to go off this topic in a minute, but I want to mention it because it's quoted in the same context of what will happen at the time of the Geulah, of the redemption in its later stages, and how that will have an impact on the totality of the Jewish people. And what is that? People, when somebody eats taref, someone eats unkosher, that action, our rabbis say, soref et haneshama. It burns the spirit. It burns the spirit. Now, this is a very interesting point because we talked about this, some of us, and we said we are what we eat. From a Torah point of view, we are what we eat. And we said, Lo tavashel gedi b'chalev imo. We mentioned that in 2 or 3 different parshiot, it's listed as the last mitzvah in a long list of mitzvot, meaning that it's the most important of all, and it's the machriya, it's the determinant to everything that preceded it, to everything that came before. So when I saw this in the context of the other, I was shocked. I said, 1 second, you're going to tell me that in the late time of the coming of the Mashiach, you're going to tell me that as the Jewish nation gets stronger and becomes more intolerant, it's going to be a big problem? I got it, because I see it. The more Torah we've gotten, the less tolerant we've become, unfortunately. But now you're going to tell me that kashrut has a determining factor here? And the answer is yes. And I found that remarkable. And how does that connect? It connects in the following way. I am what I eat. I am what I eat. And to the extent that a person eats something that his neshama should never come into contact with, the neshama doesn't walk out unscathed. The neshama walks out hurt by it. There's nothing that doesn't have a positive or otherwise impact on us. So if we're going to say that it's about how a person acts and how a person feels, which enables how he acts with another, then the element of kashrut is a absolute direct connector. So what does this mean for us? Thank God, I would say, overwhelmingly people don't eat taref out anymore. Thank God. We live in New York City. We can take kosher food anywhere. We can hire a kosher chef anywhere. We could fly kosher food anywhere. I mean, if there was ever a generation that didn't have to bother with this issue, we're that generation. There's more kosher restaurants in Brooklyn than in Manhattan possibly today. So I think the issue becomes as follows. If this is an issue of protecting the neshama, I think it then is a trickle-down concern. For those people who are still eating taref food out, the game is over. It's over. It should have been over a long time ago. We are what we eat. And there's simply, and from my perspective, and I'm sorry to come off this way, but there's simply no excuse at this point in time. There's simply no excuse. For those who aren't eating out taref, I think it's about being more makpid, being more diligent on what goes on in the kitchen. Let's be more diligent. Are we really making sure that there was enough time in between when meat and dairy in that oven if there aren't separate ovens? Are we watching what goes into the dishwasher and how it goes in to make sure that there's no mixing of basar and halab there? Are we looking at what happens in our sinks? These are very real things. And as much as we look at our character traits and we work hard to make them better, there's no question that there are all kinds of things that impact my character. And kashrut is certainly one of them. Okay, so far, thoughts, questions? Sarah, what do you got?
So I always felt that kashrut was to keep the Jews separate from the other people. It wasn't really basically the eating of itself. It was to keep the Jews together.
It's a
And
great
once they
point.
mixed outside, now as
Right.
far as lo tevashel gedi b'chalav imo, it was an act of kindness. Don't take that calf from its mother and dress the milk, to teach us humility and kindness towards each other. So as the
All
food
true.
itself, yes,
All
it's
true.
important, but
Hi,
what we
Owen.
learn from it. So if in the dishwasher, the meat and milk are together, I never thought of it as so crazy
Okay.
as, you know.
So it goes like this. First of all, you're right in terms of the two things that you mentioned, that the one of the reasons that we rationalize the concept of kashrut is about keeping us separate from the goyim. That's certainly one of the reasons for it. And the reason of rahmanut is also of having pity and sympathy. It's true. At the same time, though, there are some very straightforward concepts in Judaism, and let's talk about them for a couple minutes. We are what we wear, and we are what we eat. We are what we say. We are what we think. That's pashut. Everybody would say that. But the chidushim, the novelties in Judaism are, we are what we wear. Straight and simple. Fact. A person's neshama will be impacted by how he or she dresses. Now, we might like that idea or not, but it's a fact. We go out of our way to talk about what can be worn in the Bet HaMikdash, how it can be worn, by whom, at what point in the service. Why? Who cares? Tell the Cohen to put on a great suit and walk in. What are we doing? What are we doing? Let it be something clean and neat. Let it be white. Let it be purple, whatever it is. No, it's these specific begadim. And then we change to those specific things. And it's exactly at this point in the process and on and on and on. Why? Because what I'm wearing has an impact on how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and where my standards are and where my dreams are. And this is a real thing. Now, same thing is true with what I eat. Now, it's absolutely true. We one of the reasons, so to speak, for kashrut is to stay away from the goyim and the issue of sympathy, rahmanut, as you said, Sarah. But there is the biggest issue here. The biggest issue. We don't have a challenge in our community about hobnobbing with goyim. Thank God, we don't have a big threat there. So the big issue fundamentally is that I am what I eat. And that's a real thing. And again, the same way I am what I wear. So we need to look, let's look at it very, very simply. If we ate unhealthy food,
That's it.
wouldn't it hurt us?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if I eat something that's unhealthy spiritual food, should I think it's not going to hurt me? Why wouldn't it?
Well, it keeps you away from your people.
What do you mean?
It keeps you separate from the Jews while you're eating unholy foods.
No, I'm leaving all that aside. I'm saying that there's something that happens to me
Oh.
inside as a result
Yeah,
of
I
what
agree.
comes
If I
inside.
simply don't eat it, there's a purpose.
Okay, good. So, what my point is as follows. You know, I gave a class on this a few years ago to a number of people in the community, and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked by how incredibly defensive they became on this issue. I couldn't even believe it, because from my perspective, I'm going out to be with the people I love, and whatever I eat. Who cares? I'm going out to enjoy someone or many people whom I want to be with. It's just that simple. That's what it's about. And if the food is good, good. If the food is okay, it's still good. And if the atmosphere is great, it's great. And if it's less than great, so what? So if we take that and we drill down with it, and we understand that food has an impact on our psyche, on our heart, on our emotion, on our intellect, spiritually, then it's something to be thinking about. So I'm mentioning it just as a sidebar to tonight. It's a main focus, but if we're thinking about the fact that we're drilling down to the more advanced stages of the Jewish redemption, and therefore there's a brighter light than ever on everything we do, we may want to think about this issue as well. Thoughts, comments? Everybody cool?
It makes sense. It makes sense.
All right. Okay, great. So let's continue. This idea of respect for others is really shouted at by a pasuk or two or three. It's pretty in many pasukim, many verses in the Torah. But I mentioned last week that it would be great for people to start looking at the Chumash and taking verses and reading them and fighting with them and being Doresh and coming up with our own ideas and so on. Within the context of what we're talking about here, which is a different level of interaction with others, I want to bring a few psukim and show you in, I guess, maybe a backhanded, but at the same time direct way, how this all connects. We're going to Shavuot, right? We're real close. And of course, what do we celebrate? As we know, we celebrate the receiving of the Torah. Okay. And what is the hallmark of that, or the most outstanding, the poster of that, is the Ten Commandments, the Aseret HaDibirot. I want to read you the first pasuk in the Ten Commandments, and I want you to explain the pasuk for me as if you were reading it yourself. So I'm going to say it in Hebrew and English. Erwin, I'm looking at you for this one. Vaydaber Elohim et kol hadevarim ha'ele le'emor. Listen to the English. Vaydaber, and God Elohim, the word Elohim, et kol, the all, devarim, sayings, these to the following. Let me say it again. God, but we're using the word Elohim here, not Ammonai, God, said all of these sayings, and this is how he said them. Now, we have a rule. I mentioned it to you guys before. And Serena, I need you on this one. We have a rule. When we have an extra word in the pasuk, what do we do with it? Serena, what do you got?
We examine it, we expound upon it, we.
Beautiful. We examine it, we expound upon it. Beautiful. So talk to me. Vaydaber ha'Elokim. Now, whenever we see the word dibur, vaydaber in the Chumash, it means that whatever was written is just a small portion of what was said. Very important. When you see the term vaydaber,
Does it
As
also
a-
mean, does it also mean a dialogue between Hashem and a person? As
Okay, let's
opposed to
see. It
Emor,
could.
Emor is not.
Let's see, it could, very good. Where it says, okay, vayomer means it's whatever
That's it.
was said
That's
was
it.
written down. Come
Right.
on, right? Vaydaber means whatever was said was written down, but there was so much more said. So now, Vaydaber Elokim, when we use the term Elokim, we're talking about the God of reckoning, the God who demands things, as opposed to Ammonai. What is that? What does that connotation tell us? The God who? The
Creates,
God, huh?
creates,
What? No, it's forgiving, is the forgiving God. Ammonai is the forgiving God. Elohim is the judging God. So we got to know. Okay, good. Erwin, whenever you see the term Elohim,
Yeah.
you're talking about, you're saying God is calling us out on something. He's going to hold us accountable for X. When you see the term Ammonai, it's God is staking out a claim, but he understands that there's a lot of development here, and he's going to give us time to get there. And there's going to be a road and forgiveness.
That's great.
So Ammonai,
That's
Yud
great.
Ke Vav Ke, always means process. Elohim means action. Now, good. So now
So
we
that's
say
why,
that-
Ricky, that's why that starts with that. Hashem is right on your side.
Beautiful.
No? Right?
Perfect. Exactly.
Now, I could never
Okay?
understand the different reasons why Hashem, but now you just gave me some insight
So
on
use them.
first couple.
Now that you have them, use them. Whenever you see Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, Ammonai, know that we're talking about compassion, sympathy,
Wow.
forgiveness, process. Whenever we see Elohim, know that you're talking about now, demands, accountability, judging. That's the difference. Okay. When you see
Wow.
the word Vaydaber, it means that there's a lot of fun to be had there because only a limited portion of what was said was actually written down. So go into the pasuk and have a great time. Good. Now the pasuk could have said Vaydaber Elohim et hadevarim le'emor. The pasuk could have said, and God said these things accordingly. The pasuk has a lot of extra words. It says et, the, kol, all, devarim, things, ha'eder, these. Wild pasuk. And this is where you have a great time. And I'm going to tie this back to where we started in a few minutes. Now, how do you have a great time with a pasuk like this? When the verse goes so far out of the pshat, away from the literal, simple language that would have covered what needed to be said. Now, Sarah, Ricky, Erwin, AB, Sonny, Bobby, anybody has the ability within the framework of Torah to suggest an idea, to develop a thought. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. So I'm going to give you two totally different approaches to this pasuk. One approach is that What does this pasuk teach us? According to the rabbis in the Gemara tractate of Hagigah, it teaches us that if two people are sitting in the room and have completely different opinions and are arguing those opinions, that's exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. He wants Erwin to understand it one way, Abi to understand it another way, Joey to understand it totally differently, Sari to understand it totally differently, and to sit together and break our heads over it. And our rabbis say that that's what brings emet. Now, talk to me about that, because on its surface, it's completely illogical. Tell me.
I don't think we're robots. I don't think that we're made
Fantastic.
to just, obey and, without some kind of conflicts to grow.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna quote for you a midrash that's brought from Masechet Shabbat. I'm not gonna quote the whole thing, but it's exactly to your point. And it's on this pasuk as well, a little further on, the next pasuk actually. The Yoshua ben Levi says that when Moshe Rabbeinu accepted the Torah, Hakadosh Baruch Hu told him, go up to Shamayim, go up to the heavens and bring it down, right? He was on the top of the mountain. When he went up there, this midrash, this parable says, that the angels surrounded him and said, why should you get the Torah? Why don't we get the Torah? Right? Classic story been told in a number of iterations. So what does Moshe, and so God tells Moshe, you answer, Moshe. I'm not going to answer for you, you answer. So what does Moshe say? You know where it says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord their God who took you out of Egypt? Listen, you angels, you didn't come out of Egypt. We know where it says that you shouldn't have any other gods. Listen, you angels, you don't live with nations who love and have great passion for their gods and get influenced by that. This is not an issue for you. You know where it says the Yom Shabbat, you have to keep Shabbat. Listen, angels, you don't work, and so on and so on and so on. Where it says Lo Tisa, don't mislead and so on. Don't use God's name in vain. You don't do business. Where it says honor a parent, you don't have a parent and so on. So it's to Sarah's point. The Torah is development. The Torah is absolute in its language, but it's absolutely developmental in its understanding. And what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us is take it and run with it. And there's no greater love or confidence that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have in us than by giving that us to do that. To Sarah's point, God could have very easily made us robots. Other religions have what we call dogma, right? There's Christian dogma. The dogma, this is what the church says, and this is what you do. In Judaism, it's the exact opposite. Let's work this pasuk together, for example, and everybody come up with an approach,
Right.
and sit in a room and argue about it and bring different reasons for it and different backgrounds and other verses that support it. And based on that, we're going to discover God's truth.
But Ricky, you keep saying, I just want to answer, you keep saying argue, conflict, like these are all like sort of like about. Wouldn't like be more collaborative? Let's say like the classic Shammai was, the two guys that used to belt it out, Shammai and Hillel, whatever. They were always, this guy said that, this guy said it, this guy said that. So they sat all day and they swung it out. So at the end of the day, is it more collaborative than it is? The end game is Hashem wants you to get the answer, correct? Or he wants you to get to where, not the answer, but to chop it, to get it.
Right. To get it is to chop it, right. And how do you chop
I
it?
don't think so.
What?
I think it's the journey. I think
I'd
there's
agree.
so much more in the journey of getting to the answer. I think the answer ends.
Yes, 100%, Sarah.
But our journey,
the
but
journey
first of
should
all,
be, but the journey should be fun. It should not.
the journey should
But
be
they're
great.
doing
The journey
it in love of Torah. They're doing it in the name of Torah. So while
So
they're
it goes like this.
swinging
It
at
goes
it,
like this. Let's go step by step. Let's commit to the journey. Let's commit to the journey, right?
Right.
Vaydaber Elokim et kol hadavarim ha'ele le'emor. And God said all of these things Devarim, twice, le'emor, to say. Let's commit to the journey and say, yes, Erwin, Ricky, everybody on this call has the self-confidence and the intellectual commitment to go on the journey. Let's go on the journey. That's step number one. Open the book, break our heads, go on the journey, right? I'm going to bring you a few other explanations to this pasuk,
But
right?
Ricky, isn't that what the Gemara is all about?
It is, but we are partners to the Gemara. When we study the Gemara, we're sitting there with Hillel and Shammai and Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Levi. We're sitting there with them. That's the way it is. Yeah?
Yeah.
Somebody want to say something? So we're sitting there with them. So now, Sarah, give me your explanation on the pasuk. And God said all of these things to the Jewish people. The Gemara in Hagigah says that the pasuk was written this way to frame for all of us, X thousands of years later, that it's all about the process, it's all about the journey, it's all about the, as Erwin put it, the duking it out, the breaking our heads against each other, and that's the way to find truth. Beautiful. That's what the Gemara says. Good. Now, Chacham Sarah, give me your expression of the pasuk. Give me your interpretation.
So I think that the whole dibur thing, the whole dialogue between Hashem and the person is very important. It's not le'emor, this is what I say you have to do, that there's going to be a conflict with, a dialogue between
Right.
you and God for a very long time. And maybe a lot of things that you do and everything that you do.
Good. Give me another explanation. Who has another explanation?
I think that God wants everybody to be creative, to be unique, and bring all that to the table and then run with it.
I love it. Exactly. That's what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Bring your unique ideas to the table. Ain't
Right.
nobody who has truth. By the way, this is the first time, the last 150 years in Jewish history, we took certain people and we put them over here, and we took everybody else and we put them down here. What's going on here? There was never a rabbi and a balabait like this. There was like this. Okay, the rabbi had a full-time job teaching and serving the community. Fantastic, and should be deeply respected for that. But anybody in the room could go head to head with him. And why not? Because he got and she got into the same psukim. And that's what Robin is saying. I agree. Another explanation. Rashi says something completely different on this pasuk. Listen to this. God said all of these things, redundant. Rashi says that he said all of the dibirot in one shot. Now, does Rashi's idea have anything at all to do with what was said in the Gemara? In the Gemara, it was said that the reason for this language in the pasuk was to teach us that there's a wide open possibility for people to come in and weigh in on an idea. Rashi comes and says something completely different. He says, no, my explanation of the need for all these extra words is to tell everybody forever and ever that God said all of the dibirot at one time.
Why would he say that though?
Perfect, Sarah. Somebody answer Sarah.
Wait, which dibirot? All the mitzvot?
So there's two interpretations of Rashi. Great, Serene. Two interpretations about Rashi. One is that that Rashi is alluding to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said the first couple of dibirot together, and then Moshe said everything else after that. And the other explanation is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said all of the 10 dibirot, all of the 10 commandments in one shot, went back and repeated the first and second individually, and then Moshe picks it up. Right? Now, what do we do with that? I'm not really sure. Right?
Yeah.
But what's the beauty of what we just did?
It's just a different interpretation. It makes you think
Do
differently.
they have anything to do with each other? Zero. Do they come from the same 7, 8 words? Yes. Is that awesome? Yes.
Got you.
Is that where I want to be playing? Sure. That's where I want to play.
But
I'm going to give
Ricky-
you yeah.
Rick, doesn't that have something to do with like Torah Shebiktav and Torah Sheba'al Peh? Like Hashem's giving you the dibrot, that's like the Ktav, and then the Gemara saying you also could interpret that. So you need both to achieve, to be
Exactly.
a true Jew.
Exactly. So the reason I'm bringing it up tonight is for twofold. First of all, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the verbal Torah, that's the most important part of the Torah. You would think that the written is most important. It's not. It's the most important. Now, let's go back to our beautiful little story of Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz that we were delving into a few weeks back. What was Boaz's superstar move? What was his
Eddie.
superstar move? Huh?
He interpreted the law. He changed the law.
Fantastic. Serene, what right did he have to do that?
He had every right. He had the right.
Huh?
He was the head of the.
He was the head of the Sanhedrin, right? So he's sitting with a bunch of other rabbis, right?
Yeah.
So what does he do? He uses a different learning tool than we're using tonight. The learning tool we're using tonight is redundancy and extra words. Whenever there's redundancy and extra word, have a great time. Go out there, think, come up with new ideas, connect them to other parts of the Torah, whatever you want. What Boaz did is he says, wait a minute, there's a very, very, very strict prohibition here that someone from the people of Moab or Ammon will never be allowed to be a part of the Jewish people. Up to 10 generations, our rabbis explain, not 10, but it's forever. But what does Boaz do? He says, but wait a second, let's go back to the issue. Let's create a context. The context was to punish these people for the way they treated the Jewish people. But the women had nothing to do with it. And what ends up happening? Everybody goes for it. So, as much as Megillat Ruth is a story about mutuality and all the other things we talked about, it's also another super important affirmation of the prospect of the oral law carries the day. To the extent where one man takes one position with a learning methodology that's recognized by putting something in its total context, to allow a lady to come into the Jewish people from whom we're going to build the ultimate Jewish society. What does that tell you?
Fantastic.
It's another, that the oral law is the whole story. Now,
Also, it shows you that the people of the time respected each other. Like you're saying now, people don't respect each other. People are not respecting each other's differences.
It's true.
perfect. That's exactly where I wanted to go.
True.
That's exactly where I wanted to go. Exactly. We say that the 24,000 students of the B'nai Akiva died during the Omer because of their inability to have regard for the other guy in the room with a different opinion. Now, one of the reasons they say that Beit Hillel was accepted over Beit Shammai, well, our rabbis give two reasons. The reason that, generally speaking, Beit Hillel, other than a few cases, is what is the law today, is because they were more in touch with the people and adjudicated along the lines of what was reasonable for the people to do. Beit Shammai was much more strict, and the people simply couldn't keep their edicts. So therefore, we don't go according to Beit Shammai. But there's another something here, which speaks to Serene's point and connects everything we're saying tonight. And that is that one of the other reasons brought that Beit Hillel's opinion was accepted is because they said, and listen to this, it's fabulous, and it's so telling, it's so insightful. They said that Beit Hillel would mention Shammai's opinion before their own and logically argue it. How awesome is that?
Fantastic.
How awesome is that? We're sitting in the room. One group says that the purpose of all these extra words was to say that that there's always going to be a lot of opinions. The other
Right.
one in the room says, you know what? You don't know what you're talking about. He wouldn't say you don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. The other one in the room says, the reason for all these extra words is to teach me that God said all these things at one time in one breath. When Hillel would argue against the opinion that wasn't theirs, they would state the opposing opinion first and the logic behind it, and then they would state their opinion.
Maybe he used it as a lever to shine. In other words, he showed this guy, he showed his opinion, then he showed why his supersedes that. He could have used him as a platform to get to look sharp.
No,
Okay, but how many people do you know, Erwin, who completely, yeah, I'm with you. How many people
No,
do you know? who
I'm
completely-
not knocking either one, God
No,
forbid.
of course
I'm
not. Of course not. How many people do you know who have a completely different opinion on something with somebody else? By the way, we're not talking about who's a better catcher on the Yankees, right? We're talking
Right.
about everything. We're talking about Torah. This is what these people did 20 hours a day. They didn't do anything
Right.
else. They were
Right.
students, right? So there was nothing of a greater focus and more important and more on their lips than Torah. And what did they have the humility and the courage and the great strength to do? To state the opposite guy's opinion and
Right.
all the logic that came with it, and then state their opinion. Now, to Serene's point, could you imagine if we were doing that? Could you imagine? I would say that there wouldn't be any missiles falling on Jewish people right now. That's what I would say. If we were able to, on any level, on a Torah learning level, on a social level, on a chesed level, on a basic interaction level, if we were able to be at a point in our lives like they did in the greatest halls of Jewish learning, at the greatest points in Jewish learning, where they would mention the other guy's opinion with
Right.
all his logic, and
Right.
only after fully vetting that out, they'd go back to their opinion. Do you know anybody who ever did that?
Ricky,
I don't. I
is
don't.
you're supposed to,
Well, he's
What,
giving
Bobby?
the guy, he's giving him the kavod, yeah.
He's
It's a
giving
nice
the-
thing.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, but what's more than that? Bobby, what were you going to say?
I would think that's how they're supposed to learn, like all these guys that are sitting in kollels all the world. Isn't that how they're supposed to be learning?
Okay, but we say that the 24,000 students, 24,000, not 10, of Rabbi Akiva, the greatest sage of all time, didn't do that. So yeah, it's how everybody is supposed to be doing it. Can I honestly say that when I have an opposite opinion to somebody, I don't even give him enough time to express his whole opinion. No less hear the whole thing, say it over, hear his reasons, say them over, and then give my thought.
That takes a
Inshallah.
long time. That takes a long time.
It takes a long time, right?
Like how
Hey,
that active listening.
Yeah,
yeah, it's active listening, right? Yeah,
yeah.
Sarah, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's the art of communication. I don't think it's the necessarily you know, that people like want to shun or want to not pay attention. I think it's the art of just kind of just explaining oneself, or putting yourself in someone else's position where like and how to break it down so they can possibly understand. Because I teach really like Satmar students and all kinds of interesting people, and they totally don't agree with the things I say, but we have a communication, and I think the art is in communicating. I don't think it's anything else.
Okay, fine. So what I'm saying like this.
Ricky,
Yeah, to the extent that, yeah. Who's that?
no, I think it's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi. I think it's also a lot of humility. that he was able to do that. He was so humble to,
You know what it is? I think, and where does humility come from? Michelle, tell me, where does humility come from? Who are the most humble people?
I'm gonna say in belief in Hashem,
Right, but
that
where does it-
everything is from Hashem.
Fine, but even go more than that. Who are the most humble people? Who is called the most humble person? Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So
Put
who are the
others before
most
the
humble people.
Yes.
Anybody? Who typically are the most humble people? What would you say?
Leaders,
Who?
say leaders, like well-known leaders,
So Sonny, let go. Be a little more specific.
because to be a
Yeah.
leader, you have to be a leader. You have to be able to know where everybody else is coming from, and to be able to know that, you have to be. I feel like to understand that yourself and be humble yourself.
Fine. So in order to do all of that, you have to be confident. You have to be a confident person, right? Humble people are confident people. Insecure people are never humble. Never, never. Arrogant people are invariably insecure. You know, chutzpahnik people who have a lot of ga'ava, a lot of haughtiness, are invariably insecure people. But a confident person has no problem spending 20 minutes speaking out the other person's opinion with all the great logic that comes with it. We don't even give people a chance to finish their sentence, right? We're Easterners, we're New Yorkers. I traveled to the South once. I was blowing my brains out because they listened to everything I said and my complete sentence before they answered. Never saw it before. And I had to do the same thing. But no, we're going to go further. We're going to stay over your opinion, right? You have, sorry, to your point, you have someone with a completely different hashkafa. You're gonna have this presence of mind and regard for yourself and for the other person to say over their point completely, and then, and with all the logic, and then, and only then to present your own. So, to Serene's point, if our rabbis are saying that this period in Jewish history will have an acute sensitivity from God's perspective to Ben Adam L'Haviro, to how people treat each other. And then we talk about accepting the Torah again. And then we talk about Megillat Ruth, which we said is not about halacha, but about how to live life. And then we look at how you learn Torah, how Boaz did it. You see that there's some great dots connecting here. And when somebody builds himself and herself to a place where they have the intellectual courage to look at a verse of 6 or 8 words and have a great time and interpret. Now they're already building the process. If I can listen to my own creative ideas beyond any text, then I can certainly listen to somebody else's. And now I'm changing the Jewish people for good. I want to bring 1 or 2 other
Hey,
psukim.
Ricky, can I say that kind of explains to me why the Keraim, who just observed the Torah verbatim, died out? Because
Yeah, exactly. And that was a great
conflict.
threat to Judaism. That was the greatest threat because everything was literal. You know,
I thought they were going to be the heroes, but
they were
the
gonna be
way
the
you
heroes.
explained it, they really aren't.
All right. Lo tavaru esh b'chol moshavotechem. When it says in the Torah, don't light a fire on Shabbat. They said, okay, we have to sit in darkness the whole day of Shabbat. You know, stuff like that.
They really followed
Ayin
it.
tahat ayin shen tahat shen is literally an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
Let me tell you another pasuk which I think is interesting. 2 psukim, and here again, I want to hear some of your thoughts, and we'll wrap it up in 7-8 minutes. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. You should not have another God in front of me. Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel v'chol temuna asher b'shamayim mima'al v'asher ba'aretz mitachat. And don't make for yourselves an idol. Don't bring another God, and don't make for yourselves an idol. Now, go at the psukim, go at these verses with absolute intellectual courage and rigor. A, first tell me, what are you troubled about in the first pasuk? Lo yeh lecha elokim achirim. There shouldn't be another God in your life. What does that mean? What does it mean? Maybe it means that there's other gods,
Right.
right?
Well,
Holy cow. What is it? What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying here? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying that there are other gods? This Lo yeh lecha elokim achirim, that other God, don't bring him into your life. Just stick with me. A little bit problematic. Then it says, Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel. Don't make for yourself an idol. Now tell me what the challenge is when you put the two psukim together, two verses together. What do you say?
God's saying there are, let's say there's other gods that exist, and then he's also saying that you could create your own God.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So now we have to deal with the two psukim separately, and we have to deal with them together. Separately, we have to deal with the language of the first pasuk, which says, don't bring another God in. Okay, our rabbis have a little bit of a tough time with this. And they say that, the gods there are no other gods, but those who other people think are a god. Okay, not a great answer. The question is stronger than the answer. Now, I only looked at one Gemara on that answer, but I'm sure there's a lot more. Lo yeh lecha elokim achirim al panai.
what does al panai mean?
Right. What do you think?
In front of me, on top of me?
Beautiful, Sarah. What do you say it means? What does it mean?
With me?
With me. So Onkelos explains it as with me. Onkelos explains it as with me. And the Mechilta explains it differently. The Mechilta, it says that being al panai means forever and ever, while I exist. While I exist.
Oh.
So Rashi explains it one way, right? Rashi explains it one way. And the Mechilta al panai, Rashi actually explains it the same way. I'm sorry. Yeah. Explains it the same way. As long as I'm around, don't have another one. But tell me, what's the problem with that?
So when Moshe went up to the mountain and he wasn't around anymore, that's
No,
when
as long as God is around. No, as long as
He's always going to
he's
be
always
around.
around.
Beautiful. God is always going to be around.
He's always around, but they think he's not at some
Okay.
time.
But the point being, when you read the pasuk and it says al panai, and you look at Rashi, who we can read in English or Hebrew or any language you want today, and Rashi says al panai means as long as I'm around, you got to say not good enough. Of course, everybody knows that already. Everybody knows that God is always forever around.
But not everybody, when they're in trouble, they think God left them.
Okay, it could be. But right now,
Turn to something else.
It
Yeah.
means with the effrontery to face me.
Say that again, Myrna.
The effrontery to face me.
Nice, beautiful. Okay, Myrna has a beautiful chidush. It in front of me, facing me. That would be an affront to me. This is where Rav Soloveitchik says, go for it. Go for it. Look at what the commentaries say and work it. And if you find the commentary that you like, then do what we talked about. Learn 3 or 4 commentaries on it. Present those opinions. Present the 5th, so to speak, if you like that one. Or maybe present all 5 or all 10 or whatever it might be and say, I don't like any of them. And here's my explanation to it based on this, that, or that. And now you're engaging with God. Now you're returning his love by embracing him intimately through his words. And now with learning how to reach out to others. So it's the whole enabler. It's the enabler here. And if I can really build myself to a point where I have the discipline to look at the psukim and to look at these extra words or look at the sequence of words and so on and say, wait a minute, man, I can't go with that. I got to work it. Let me see what this one says. Let me see what that one says. And it becomes such a joyful ride. Now, one last thing. When you put the two psukim together, one last thing, we'll wrap up with this. When you put the two psukim together, talk to me. It says, Lo yeh lecha elokim achirim. You shouldn't have another God. And lo ta'aseh lecha pesel. And don't make yourself an idol. What's the problem?
What, but idol and pestle, what? Don't make a pestle, and it's the same thing.
Beautiful, Sarah. It's the same thing. Come on, guys. It's repetitive. If I can't make another God, how can I make an idol? Isn't the idol a God?
No, it could just be something that you worship, something that you value. That's really not, you shouldn't. You could just.
Okay, so Bobby is saying, no, it's not a God per se, but it's something that I'm putting my faith into.
Right.
Fabulous. Yeah. Sari, what were you going to say? Sari,
So
you had something?
I just think that like an idol is I mean, like, do you think like they thought like the little figure is a god, or do you think it's just a channel to a god? Like, because
Yes.
Right. So I'm
no,
gonna
because
put
like
my-
if you look at like when you go to all those Israeli museums in Israel, they always have like the sun god and the fertility god and the, you know, like, do they really think that? I mean, I guess my question is do they think that that little figure is going to make them pregnant, or
Right,
do
so
they
according to
think that?
Maimonides, according to Harambam, he says originally they thought that these things were God's reps on the planet, the facilitators, the shalichim, the messengers. And over time, Harambam writes that people forgot that the little statue was the messenger, which was off track to begin with. And then they made those the God themselves. And Harambam describes that it happened first with the sun, that people would worship the sun because they were afraid to worship God directly. So they would worship his biggest, most powerful creation. And then after time, people forgot that the sun was a conduit and just worshiped the sun. And it seems like the same thing would happen with these pestels. Now, when we look at what Sari is saying and what Bobby is saying, it brings us to a very exciting point, which is when you put these two psukim together, don't have another God and don't have an idol. You could tease it out, but if you're going to tease it out, you need to tell me something. You need to add something. So what do our rabbis learn from this? They learn that anything can be turned into a God. What do they do with the redundancy of the second pasuk? If it's something that's recognized by other nations of a God, okay, you can't have that in your life. Got it. The Christians call this a God. The Hindus call that a God. That's off the table, out. But the second pasuk, in that case, is unnecessary. So we got to go in Barbie's direction with Sari's tip on it, which is anything that I give a disproportionate amount of attention to or faith in is considered idol worship as far as I'm concerned.
So
Lo
maybe-
ta'aseh lecha pesel. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim. There shouldn't be other gods in your life, but don't make an idol for you. Meaning, I can turn money into a god.
Money.
I can turn anything into a god.
Right.
And that's a big chidush to say that it doesn't have to literally be something I bow down to,
Right.
but it's something that's zod, that's foreign. Anything that takes my center of gravity away from Hakadosh Baruch Hu is considered idol worship. And whatever it is, and that's one of the dirishot, that's one of the expounding ideas that comes from putting these two psukim together. Because again, as you guys saw, when you put the two psukim together, you gotta play, you gotta push.
But
So,
Ricky,
so
I'm sorry,
Ricky,
gotcha.
wait, I just want to say one thing. Maybe that's where the word idolize came from. The idol, anything you idolize can
Fantastic.
become an idol,
You're
a
right.
god.
Right.
It could be a person.
Idolizing something, right? Idolizing a person, idolizing a thing, right? You're turning it into an idol.
Sorry, Erwin.
Beautiful.
No, no, no,
Erwin,
no.
what do you got?
No, I'm just saying that when you said, when Sari said before, these little figurines, whatever you want to do, you want to have a kid, you want to go make money, there's a figurine for every little item. So, but I'm just saying, on a serious note, maybe there's a tangible, from a human perspective, it's tangible. So, you
That's
know,
what I was gonna say.
right.
Well, that's
that-
why we have the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash.
Right.
The
In other words, if you say Hashem, he's amazing, but people say, oh, how do I touch him? How do I, whatever.
Yeah.
So you got to be in that level. But you say, but I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying these figurines that Sari said, like whatever your menu is, that you could go get a little figurine and you walk away. You're strolling down the park. But because the person feels they could touch it. Like in other words, when I went to Japan, I went to all these Buddha places, to see and there was thousands of people there. They were going freaking cuckoo for these Buddhas, but it's tangible,
That's
you know?
And that's why they say that Abraham Avinu
Yeah,
stood
but how many-
alone, philosophically alone from everybody else on the planet, because it was impossible for people to get away from this physical something. They desperately needed it. And today, and then there's stories in the Gemara on how the rabbis got together and asked God to destroy the human urge for idol worship and to destroy the ego. So God listens, and for a time period, there's no ego in a human being, and every productive, ambitious thing in the world stops. So the rabbis realized that can't be a world without ego, without a sense of self for a person. And then when God decreed, when the rabbi said that there shouldn't be idol worship, God said, we can't remove idol worship in general. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed half of our urge to worship something tangible. But in practical terms, to your point, Erwin, we all still have the thing. People go to the Kotel, the most holy place we have access to, and they think they're praying to the Kotel. They're not. Obviously, they're not, right? That's the closest thing to where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence was and is. But we're not praying to the Kotel, right?
Right.
So we still, as
But
human
they're buying into the prop as the way to get there.
Yeah, that's right. So we need to be very sensitive to that, because based on how you guys explained the correlation of these two psukim, we can't allow anything to take the place of God in our hearts. We can't worship or recognize, so to speak, God from another people, and we can't make something into a god, whether it be a little stone or whatever it might be.
But like with the girls wear the red ribbon, things
Right.
like that, that's all idol worshiping. If you ask me.
It's problematic. It's definitely problematic. It's definitely problematic.
I love
So,
that.
wrapping it all up, we have Shavuot, Matan Torah. We want to be better people, right? The whole time period of the Omer is for us to be better people. We want to help however we can in terms of what's going on in Israel right now, by becoming better, by making our midot better. One of the ways to do it is, of course, to refine, to do some of the things we mentioned early on about consideration and so on and so on. But an ekroni, a very fundamental, the most fundamental way to do it is to go and look at psukim, look at verses, and read 4 or 5 commentaries who say completely opposite things, and written together on the same page, Is this an indoctrination? It's the exact opposite. The Torah wanted us to see all the different opinions, to enjoy all the different opinions, to embrace all the different opinions, to grow intellectually that way, to grow closer to God that way, and to grow closer to people that way. It enables all of it. Great.
Fantastic. Great.
All right.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody. All
Thank
right, next
you so
week, we
much.
miss everyone. It's a holiday, so the holiday will probably, I guess, I don't know. Next week, it's Tuesday night. Okay, so God willing, we'll see, huh?
It's over Tuesday night.
Yeah, the holiday's over Tuesday night.
So,
Okay, so God willing, we'll see everybody the following week, I guess.
Okay, happy
That's it.
holidays.
Great,
you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Happy
happy
holiday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you on board.
Happy holiday, thank you.
Also,
Happy holiday.
Bye.
Bye.